Day 505 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take my simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those stats again, as Russia is currently sitting on more than 236,000 military personnel losses. Again, doesn't include WIA or wounded in action. Then as we take a look at the hardware losses, so 2 tanks, 9 APVs, 23 artillery, and a whopping 6 air defense systems. Which is remarkable. And to take, for instance, this footage from just yesterday of a pair of Ukrainian Su-25s working near the front lines in Zaporizhia, which is a reminder of how Russia hasn't been able to create air superiority over Ukraine, despite multiple claims that the Ukrainian Air Force was destroyed in the past. Then we'll head across to the map and we'll start out in the capital as Russia continues its barrage of Shahed drones on the capital of Kiev right there. Now, the Kiev authorities reported the shooting down of all the drones, of which there are about a dozen or so in total. However, the drone debris, some of it hit the side of a high-rise building, completely taking the apartment's facade off. Then we'll head across to the Donbass today as Ukraine never lost their gains north of Soledar the other day and instead made some official liberation gains, in fact, right adjacent to the Rozdalivka settlement. So we'll zoom in a bit there and I'll show you the date map for that one. So back and forward, got to go back a couple of times in this case, and there it was there. So since liberated territory, which is really fantastic to see, obviously. And then moving along down to Klishchivka, which is just south of Bakhmut itself. You'll see again with the map updates, the Russian forces continue to retreat, as was very much expected there anyway. Then, in the vicinity of Kurdimivka, so Russia once again is losing another of their most modern and elite main battle tanks, the T-90M variant, right next to an already destroyed Russian truck, as you can see there. And this tank in particular was abandoned by the crew after being struck the first time, and shortly thereafter obliterated by a Ukrainian drone dropped munition to complete the job right down the hatch. Then, somewhere in the east, another Russian tank gone. This time, a T-72 tank was destroyed by a Javelin ATGM, or anti-tank guided missile. Both tanks of which I've mentioned there may indeed likely account for those very 2 Russian tank losses we saw on the stats just today. But good luck in me showing you the other 90 pieces of hardware in total that Russia lost in the past day, which would make for just a very, very long video. Having said that, I do like to make the effort to show the particularly significant losses, like this Russian APC, which got vaporized shortly after it drove over their own AT mine. So a Russian anti-tank mine, which has been an ongoing Achilles heel for Russia in this war, or better to say, an operational weakness, as Russia has wasted a lot of their own vehicles and a lot of their own ground-laid mines throughout this war due to a lack of proper planning, documentation, detection, clearing capabilities, and so forth. And I've always found it to be a huge point of difference for both armies, as the AFU anticipates dealing with an inhospitable and mine-laden environment, whereas the Russian army's mechanized units, by contrast, appear to almost intentionally be the mine detectors themselves. Or more likely, they're just untrained personnel and are likely just following assault or reconnaissance directives by their commanders, who operate within a battle space where access to critical information is very constrained or limited. And that would be the very nice way and diplomatic way to put it for many elements of the Russian army. Then we'll head south and momentarily we'll take a look at Pryutne. the Pripyat front, as Russian forces were again, looking at the date map here, forced to retreat, allowing Ukraine to officially extend the liberated region's gains right here. Then in terms of some more updates in the south, we may not as yet see it on this map, but most recently the Ukrainian forces appear to have taken over most of the Russian fortifications just on the north edge of the settlement of Zerbianka. And although there is heavy fighting in the grey zone right here, right now, it's not considered to be close combat as yet for this location. Then also in the south, there were HIMARS strikes on Russian refueling trucks in the occupied parts of Zaporizhia, as Ukraine continues to focus not just on Russian artillery, but also anything related to supply and logistics. And so when we take a look at places like the east and the south of Ukraine, the front lines, Russia's reactive operational tactics never cease to amaze me, as they continue to send all of their land army, or what's available of it, into Ukraine, including the troops who were supposed to protect against the perceived threats of the Finnish border. Also the politically volatile south of Russia, which I've spoken about before. Then also far into the east, and even at Kaliningrad too, which all in all makes for some very dangerous implications, with Russia leaving itself wide open to geographic compromise. For instance, perhaps Japan would like to take back their Kuril Islands, or more likely, China, when presented with the uncontested opportunity, could cite 200-year-old territorial conflicts on land ownership with Russia to get their hands on parts of East Russia, and including perhaps parts of Siberia, really, in order to get land access to the Arctic Ocean in the north, which is expected to have huge shipping route value in the upcoming years. But I digress. So point being, Russia is actively creating its own national security issues in so many ways by having started this invasion into Ukraine. Then we'll head across to some news for today. So in some of the biggest news for the day would be the rounding up of the 2-day NATO Summit event held in Lithuania over the past 2 days, and held largely in the context of the ongoing Russian invasion into Ukraine. And although Ukraine is not at all likely to be granted NATO membership status until after the end of the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine has or was able to ensure a number of security commitments from all attending G7 nations, which includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. And those security guarantees included providing ongoing and long-term defense assistance to Ukraine in the form of military equipment, training, and intelligence sharing so that Ukraine may fight against Russian aggression. Also pledged was the resolute determination of the G7 members to ensure Russia bears full responsibility for their criminal actions and invasion into Ukraine, and also that the reparations are paid by Russia to Ukraine for these actions as well. But then also, timed to this event, a number of nations pledged additional defense equipment to Ukraine, including Norway, who has pledged an additional 2 NASAMS air defense systems to Ukraine. Really good systems, so that's good to see. Oh, and even Australia got into the action with the Aussie PM committing an additional 30 Bushmaster protected mobility vehicles, which is on top of the 90 already received or committed. And as great as those vehicles are, I'm sure that the 41 decommissioned Australian F-18 Hornet fighter jets that Australia is seemingly slowly negotiating with the US to send to Ukraine was really an unofficial side topic of conversation in the least during this event. At least I would hope. And 41, that's a staggering number. All that would otherwise be dismantled and sent to the scrap heap. Oh, also, I've got to say, British PM Sunak and Italian PM Meloni were having a laugh at something on the cell phone there, but what it was, we may never know. Then in a couple of quick funnies to round it all off for today, guys. So the first one's quite quick. I came across this Lada, this Russian Lada car with cope cage installation. Now, date and location unknown for this one. I will concede that, but the mere fact that it exists in this way tends to suggest that this Lada is used in a military context, or at least in military adjacent role contexts to support Russian forces, which is just embarrassing. Then in a final funny to round it all off for today, guys, so Russia is still at it with their technologically superior hardware behemoths, if you will, this time with this monstrosity that seems to include a Soviet 100mm T-12 anti-tank gun, which is actually a pretty poor effort for the second best army in the world. Plus, it's a 3-ton cannon on a 12-ton MTLB frame. I mean, that's got some limitations at best. Oh, not to mention that the T-12 anti-tank gun is 70 years old, first produced in 1961, and is known to be ineffective even against Leopard 1s. So not the Leopard 2 tanks, but the Leopard 1s, of which Ukraine will receive 300 of them and probably more later. Russian ingenuity. What will they think of next? So thanks for watching, guys. Please continue to like and subscribe and comment. I really appreciate it all, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.